I was enjoying my morning coffee when I spotted 4 people with matching polo shirts and sunglasses marching up my driveway. Little did they know they were about to try and arrest the wrong homeowner. It was a peaceful morning in Willow Ridge, Texas. I was enjoying my cup of coffee, savoring those quiet moments before starting my day. As I gazed out the window, something caught my attention. 4 figures standing on my sidewalk, arms crossed, wearing matching polo shirts and sunglasses, radiating self-importance. Let me tell you something about the Willow Ridge Estates HOA. It's run by people with too much free time and too little common sense. These folks act like they're running a military base instead of a suburban neighborhood. Over the years, they'd harassed me about my fence height, garage color, and even how I parked my truck. But nothing could have prepared me for what was about to happen. I studied the intruders from my kitchen. One clutched a notebook like they were documenting crimes for the neighborhood record. Another had a cheap toy radio strapped to her waist like a kid playing pretend. But the real highlight was the woman in the middle, Patricia Wilson, with her short, overly dyed hair and perpetual scowl. As the self-proclaimed queen of Willow Ridge and president of the HOA, she was my personal nightmare. I sighed, took one last sip of my coffee and walked toward the door. This was going to be an interesting morning. Before I could even open the door fully, Patricia started talking like she was delivering a presidential address. "You are in serious violation of HOA rules and we are here to take action," she announced, her voice carrying across the quiet neighborhood. I blinked in confusion. "Excuse me?" That's when I realized these people weren't just here to talk, they were here to arrest me. And they had no idea they just picked a fight with the wrong guy. Patricia stepped forward with the smug confidence of someone who had never been told no in her life. She reached into her pocket and pulled out a laminated HOA identification card, shoving it in my face like it was a federal warrant. "You are under investigation for multiple infractions including unauthorized painting of your garage, possession of an unregistered vehicle on your property, and..." She paused dramatically, her eyes scanning me like a prosecutor about to deliver a death sentence. "Inappropriate behavior towards members of the community." I raised an eyebrow. "Inappropriate behavior? What are you talking about?" Then it hit me, this was HOA speak for, "You refuse to show up to our ridiculous meetings." "Let me get this straight," I said, folding my arms. "My garage, which has been the same color since I moved in, is suddenly an issue? My truck, which is legally registered and parked in my own driveway, is now a crime? And because I choose not to waste my evenings listening to HOA nonsense, I'm being accused of what? Treason?" Patricia's lips pressed into a thin line. "Because you have ignored multiple warnings, the HOA is now exercising its right to civil custody. We are taking you into detention until these matters are resolved." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "I'm sorry, you're going to do what now?" Patricia puffed out her chest, standing taller like she was about to receive a Congressional Medal of Honor. "The HOA has full authority over this neighborhood." Behind her, her 3 cronies nodded in unison like some kind of synchronized HOA enforcement squad. That's when it truly hit me. These people actually believed they had the power to arrest residents. Unfortunately for them, they had picked the absolute wrong guy. I forced myself to stay calm, deciding to play along for now. "Interesting," I said, rubbing my chin thoughtfully. "And how exactly do you plan to arrest me?" Patricia smirked and pointed to Mark Jenkins, a heavy-set man whose gut was straining against a polo shirt at least 2 sizes too small. He stepped forward, reaching into his pocket and pulling out, wait for it, plastic handcuffs. Actual plastic handcuffs, like the kind you'd find in the toy section at Walmart. I had to bite the inside of my cheek to keep from laughing outright. These people actually thought they were about to detain me with toy cuffs. Mark straightened his back and tried to look intimidating. "We have our methods," he grunted. I sighed, stepping back just a little. It was time to end this charade. With one swift motion, I reached into my back pocket, pulled out my wallet and flipped it open. My official county inspector badge gleamed in the morning sun. Patricia's smirk vanished faster than a cheap HOA fine. Her 3 cronies froze, staring at the badge as if it were a live grenade. Mark's grip on his plastic handcuffs loosened, his fingers twitching nervously. "Good to know you all think you have the authority to arrest people," I said slowly, keeping my tone level. "Because right now you're committing several crimes including impersonating law enforcement and attempted unlawful detainment." Silence fell over the group. A bead of sweat rolled down Mark's forehead. Patricia's confidence shattered like a cheap wine glass, her hand trembling slightly as she clutched her laminated HOA badge as if it could somehow protect her. What are you implying?" she stammered, taking a cautious step back. I took a step forward. I'm implying that unless you get off my property in the next 5 seconds, I'm going to arrest all 4 of you. And I guarantee you my cuffs aren't plastic." The silence stretched between us. Patricia's minions looked at her, waiting for a cue. For the first time, she seemed to realize just how badly she had miscalculated this situation. Then, like rats abandoning a sinking ship, they all started stepping back. Mark stuffed his plastic handcuffs back into his pocket, fingers trembling as if he'd just realized he'd brought a rubber knife to a gunfight. Susan, Patricia's loyal sidekick, was looking around nervously as if hoping to find an escape hatch. Jeff, the note-taker, had stopped writing altogether, probably realizing he'd just documented his own involvement in a crime. Patricia, however, wasn't going down without one last show of defiance. Her face turned red with humiliation as she tried to maintain her composure. "This isn't over," she hissed, pointing a shaky finger at me. "You can't just ignore HOA regulations. We'll be back, and when we are, you'll regret this." With a dramatic spin on her heels, she stormed off, her 3 henchmen scurrying after her like a pack of defeated hyenas. I stood there for a moment, watching as they disappeared down the sidewalk, feeling a strange mix of amusement and disbelief. Did they actually think they had the legal right to detain people? Did they believe those fake badges gave them real authority? I shook my head and stepped back inside my house. It should have been over. Anyone else would have learned their lesson and moved on. But Patricia Wilson wasn't just anyone. She wasn't just stubborn, she was obsessed. And something told me this was only the beginning of our little neighborhood war. The real county inspector versus the fake HOA police. Round 1 had gone to me, but Patricia clearly wasn't done fighting yet. The next morning I stepped outside with my garbage bags, expecting to toss them into my cans like I did every week. But as I walked toward the curb, I stopped. The garbage cans were gone. At first, I thought maybe the wind had knocked them over or a stray dog had dragged them down the street. But they weren't anywhere, not on the sidewalk, not behind the house, not even tipped over in a neighbor's yard. And then I saw her. Patricia Wilson stood across the street, arms crossed, watching me with a smirk that screamed, "I won." She didn't say a word, just stood there like some kind of suburban dictator basking in her victory. When our eyes met, she gave me a smug little smile before turning on her heel and walking back inside. I let out a slow breath. This was a middle-aged woman stealing trash cans, not exactly a criminal mastermind. Then I reached my mailbox. Inside was a thick envelope stamped with the official HOA seal. I didn't even need to open it to know it was nonsense. And sure enough, I wasn't disappointed. The letter listed new penalties. I was now forbidden from using the neighborhood waste disposal services, my garage was officially off limits, and I had to attend a mandatory meeting to discuss my inappropriate behavior. I stared at the paper, then ripped it in half right there in my driveway. If Patricia thought this would break me, she was going to have to try harder. And of course she did. That afternoon, after running a few errands, I pulled into my driveway and slammed on the brakes. Right in the middle of my driveway sat an orange traffic cone. Next to it was a makeshift sign taped to a wooden stake boldly declaring, "Garage closed by order of the HOA." I stared at it, momentarily stunned. How did this woman think she had the authority to ban someone from using their own garage? With zero hesitation, I walked over, ripped the paper off, and tossed the cone onto the sidewalk. That's when I noticed them, 2 of Patricia's cronies, Mark and Jeff, standing across the street watching. Mark had a notebook in hand, scribbling furiously like some kind of private investigator documenting my infractions. They wanted a reaction. I gave them one, I waved, then I walked back inside and slammed the door. This wasn't over. Not by a long shot. Patricia wasn't done, not even close. Things escalated quickly after the traffic cone incident. One morning, I was rudely awakened by the sound of heavy machinery pulling up in front of my house. Still groggy, I shuffled to the window and nearly choked on my coffee. A construction crew, fully equipped with excavators, shovels, and bright orange cones, was unloading in front of my driveway. They looked ready to dig up my entire property. At first, I thought they had the wrong address, but then I saw her, Patricia Wilson, standing across the street, arms crossed, wearing the most satisfied grin I'd ever seen. This woman had officially lost her mind. I threw on a shirt and went outside, straight toward the group of construction workers unloading their gear onto my driveway. A man who looked like the crew leader, holding a clipboard, turned to me with a polite smile. "Good morning, sir. We're here to start repairs on the underground pipes." I raised an eyebrow. "Repairs? What repairs?" The man glanced at his papers. "We received a request from the Willow Ridge Estates HOA stating that there was a water leak on this property. I didn't even need to ask who was behind this. One look at Patricia's smirking face told me everything. She wasn't just trying to annoy me anymore, she was trying to destroy my property. Let me guess, I said, rubbing my temples. The work order was signed by a Patricia Wilson? The crew leader flipped through the pages, nodded, and said, "Yes, sir, that's the one." I took a deep breath to keep my composure. "Look, buddy, there is no leak. Neither you nor the HOA have the authority to touch anything on my property. So I suggest you pack up your tools and head back." The man shifted uncomfortably, but before he could argue, I pulled out my county inspector badge. The effect was immediate. His eyes widened and he quickly turned to his crew. "All right guys, let's call it a day." They started packing up their tools so fast you'd think I had just declared a tornado warning. That's when Patricia came storming across the street, her face turning an impressive shade of red. "You can't do this," she shrieked. I folded my arms. "Do what? Stop them from destroying my yard for no reason?" She jabbed a finger toward me. "The HOA has authority over the neighborhood's infrastructure." I smirked. "And I have the authority to arrest you for trespassing and fraud." For the first time since this war began, Patricia Wilson was speechless. But I knew she wouldn't stay quiet for long. A week after the construction incident, I woke up to yet another commotion outside my house. This time, 2 county enforcement vehicles were parked out front, their flashing lights painting my yard in red and blue. Across the street stood Patricia, pretending to be an innocent bystander, but her satisfied smirk told me everything I needed to know. I threw on a shirt and went downstairs, opening the door before the inspectors even had a chance to knock. "Sir," said a middle-aged man with a government-issued notebook, "we've received a complaint about multiple structural irregularities on this property. We need to conduct a full inspection." "Structural irregularities?" I raised an eyebrow. He nodded. "According to the report, this residence has unauthorized construction, irregular plumbing, and a possible pest infestation." That's when it hit me. Patricia wasn't just trying to annoy me anymore. She was trying to get my house condemned. "And who exactly filed this complaint?" I asked, already knowing the answer. "Well, the HOA officially filed the report." Of course it was Patricia. I glanced across the street. She didn't even try to look innocent this time. She just smirked, arms crossed, waiting to see if this was the move that finally broke me. "All right then," I said, stepping aside. "Let's do this inspection." For the next 2 hours, the inspectors checked every inch of my house. All the while, Patricia and her loyal henchmen stood outside watching like vultures circling roadkill. When the inspection was finally over, one of the inspectors approached me, clipboard in hand. "Sir, we conducted a full inspection and found none of the irregularities listed in the complaint. Your property is fully compliant with all county regulations." I tried to hold back my laughter, I really did, but seeing Patricia's expectant expression morph into absolute horror was too much. "So," I said, arms crossed, "you're telling me that this complaint was completely false?" The young inspector shifted uncomfortably. "Well, technically, yes." "Good," I replied, pulling out my phone. "Because I'm filing a formal complaint against the HOA for harassment and misuse of public resources." That's when Patricia snapped. She stormed toward me, not even waiting for the inspectors to leave. "You're overreacting. It was just a safety protocol." But it was too late. My formal complaint triggered a full investigation into the HOA. What they found was shocking. Patricia had been fining residents for fake violations just to pad the HOA's budget, hiring sketchy contractors for neighborhood maintenance while the money mysteriously disappeared, and throwing elaborate parties under the guise of community events but only inviting her friends. And the best part? She wasn't even supposed to be the HOA president anymore. The rules stated that a new election had to be held every year, but Patricia had simply never organized one. A special emergency meeting was called. This time she was the one on trial. Residents who had once blindly followed her were now turning their backs. They had realized they'd been played. The final blow came when a county auditor was called in to review the HOA's finances. What he found? Over $30,000 missing. Patricia's house of cards collapsed instantly. The HOA board voted unanimously to remove her from office on the spot. As the real officers escorted her out, with real handcuffs, not plastic ones, someone in the crowd shouted, "Well done, Patricia." And just like that, the reign of Willow Ridge's worst HOA dictator was over. The fake HOA police had tried to arrest the real county inspector, and it had cost them everything. Sometimes justice finds a way, even in the quiet streets of suburbia.